Joining me now is the Gatestone Institute senior fellow and author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I know you've got a new op-ed out saying that China has folded in the trade war. Tell us more.
Yeah, the important thing here is that China, without any announcements, is not collecting tariffs on important goods. So, for instance, some semiconductors, aviation products, industrial chemicals, medical devices, some medicines. And also, they're going to expand that list because there are lists circulating in China of 131 items that China may not impose tariffs. So this is going to expand. It means that China is made an important concession, but it's not saying it's making a concession, which is a fascinating insight into the Chinese political system right now, which has become both intransigent and inflexible.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because the president has said now is the time to hit China with these tariffs, given that economy is in a weakened position. How would you assess the Chinese economy right now, and what is the impact of a 145% tariff on Chinese goods coming into the U.S., Gordon?
Yeah, it's not growing at the 5.4% pace that they reported for Q1. It's probably contracting, as we can see from the price data from both February and March, which signals that China's in a deflationary spiral. We are seeing underlying indicators that point to contraction, including tax receipts that were down 3.5% for the quarter. That's inconsistent with robust growth. And if China is not contracting now, somehow, it will be contracting very soon. So when you talk about 145% general tariff on Chinese goods, this really means that many factories aren't going to be selling anything to the U.S., which explains why some factories have already closed and other factories are cutting down their shifts.
Meanwhile, the Philippines is denying reports that China seized control of that disputed reef in the South China Sea, Gordon, and then they unfurled their flag on the island. Now, both countries' flags are flying on the reef. China's Coast Guard is accusing the Filipino personnel of illegally boarding the reef, even as both countries claim control over it. So how are they denying it if, in fact, they unfurled the flag? I spoke with National Security Advisor Mike Waltz yesterday, and I asked him about it, and I asked him how the U.S. is going to respond to China's aggression. Watch this.
When I'm looking at this from a national security standpoint, we have to bring our supply chains home. We saw even cheap items like mask gowns and gloves, if they're made abroad and not made here, become a national security issue. We have to have clean supply chains for our military equipment. That is a key element. Rebuilding our military under Pete Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth, focused on meritocracy and lethality, is a key element. And then, of course, working with our allies, and it's no accident that President Trump had Prime Minister Modi of India, had Prime Minister Ishiba of Japan, and made calls to the Prime Minister of Australia and South Korea. Yeah. All of those pieces are key elements of our competition with China.
Gordon, your reaction?
This is really important because at a time when China needs friends, because it's not selling goods to the U.S., it is going out of its way to antagonize not just the Philippines, not just Taiwan, but also South Korea and Australia. This shows that China is going, this is end of regime conduct. Because, you know, Xi Jinping, he can't appear to be giving in to the U.S. He has configured the Chinese political system so that it is hostile. And also, because he's been making the claim that China has surpassed the U.S., he can't look dependent on trade with the U.S., and he certainly can't look like he's talking to the U.S. under pressure. So when you have the Chinese lashing out at the Philippines at Sandy Key, as you just showed, this is really very perplexing behavior, and it shows that something is very, very wrong in Beijing right now.
Wow. Meanwhile, China's Huawei is preparing to test a new and what they claim to be more powerful AI processing chip. They are hoping it's going to surpass NVIDIA and the H100 chip. Gordon, what do you think?
Well, this is Ascend 910D, which is you're referring to. And, you know, they're going to roll it out in May for testing. And they say it's more powerful than NVIDIA's H100. But let's remember the H-100, it was released 2 years ago. So yes, they're making progress, but let's not be terribly weak in the kneed about this, because China is still behind the U.S. and the U.S. has not really imposed sanctions meaningfully. Yes, we have sanctions, but we've rolled them out in a way so that China can get around them. We don't enforce them with the vigor that is absolutely necessary. And our sanctions are not as comprehensive as they should be. So let's get serious about sanctions. And I think we'll put even more distance between us and China in the near future.
All right, Gordon, we'll be watching your work, certainly. You've been spot on all of this for so long. We so appreciate your time and knowledge. Thank you, sir. Gordon Chang this morning
thank you,
on
Maria.
Communist China.
On Saturday, President Trump is set to reopen direct talks with Iran. Listen to what White House Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt said about that.
When it comes to Iran, the president has reimposed crippling sanctions on the Iranian regime, and he's made it very clear to Iran they have a choice to make. You can strike a deal with the president, you can negotiate, or there will be hell to pay. And as the president said yesterday, if they don't choose to move forward with diplomacy and a deal, which is the direction we do see them headed in, there will be grave consequences.
Grave consequences. Okay. Retired four-star General Jack Keane joining me again here in New York City. Are we on the brink of an attack on Iran? I raised the question because we reported yesterday there are 6 B-2 bombers that have been assembled in Diego Garcia. They carry the bunker-busting bombs that you and I have talked about a lot. Are we getting ready for an attack?
Yeah, I mean, we're absolutely making preparations. I think what the president is very sincere here in trying to get the Iranians to voluntarily dismantle the program. So he's issued them an ultimatum. And what does that really mean? It means the Iranians would have to give up all of their nuclear materials. They'd have to dismantle their facilities that they have, and some of them are 250 feet in the ground with 3 feet walls. And they're also their ballistic missiles as the delivery system. But here's the big catch. We want anywhere, anytime inspections. The Iranians, in their entire history, have never granted that. They let you go to a certain sites, and meanwhile, they have secret sites where they continue their program. It's likely they're not going to put that on the table. We're going to have to insist on it. And then the last thing is by a date certain. So the alternative then, if they don't comply with this, is a strike. So yes, preparations are being made for that. It would likely be an Israeli-led, U.S.-supported strike. The Israelis have great skepticism about the Iranians voluntarily dismantling the program. So does President Trump, but he wants to give it a try. And I think on Saturday we'll start to get a sense of, are they really serious about this? Or are they kind of behaving like Putin is behaving, you know, who's delaying, wants more concessions. The Iranians do want relief from sanctions.
And we've got leverage.
We have
more leverage than we've ever had before.
More leverage in 44 years. Iran is back on their heels. We have an opportunity to finish these guys once and for all for their malign and aggressive behavior and destabilizing the Middle East. That's how far back on their heels they are. We have the leverage.
It's fascinating. All right, next one for you, General. The Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, he sounded the alarm on China's growing military. He called the build-up of their armed forces staggering. Do you think that we in America are a little naive about China's military power?
Well, I think the previous administration tried to pretend that we still had deterrence. I mean, I totally agree with the Secretary General. I was on a commission for 22 months that looked at this. Our conclusion simply when we published our report last year that China, Russia, Iran, North Korea represent the most serious and dangerous threat to the United States since World War II. And obviously the major competitor is China. They outpace us, Stuart, in just about every platform there is except submarines. That's the that's the reality.
Rocketry and missiles.
Yeah, you name it, they outpace us, and we're not even close to being able to catch up.
When you say outpace us, I mean,
they
are
have
their
more
weapons
of them.
better, or there are more of them?
They have more of them, and they've caught us in quality in just about most of all of it. It is a staggering military buildup. But here's what we have to do, and we can do this: strengthen Taiwan so that they impose costs themselves, and build up the United States military capability with our allies and partners in the region, and use some imagination. The Ukraine war has showed us that Ukraine defeated the Russian Navy in the Black Sea, and they don't have a Navy. How did they do it? They did it with drones and missiles and imagination. Warfare has changed. These big ships are very vulnerable to missiles. Autonomous vehicles above the sea, autonomous vehicles below the sea, not a few hundred of them, thousands of them can make a difference, and we can do that quickly.
But are we behind in that area?
Yes.
At this moment, we are behind.
Oh, yeah,
autonomous
absolutely.
vehicles above and underneath
Yes,
the sea.
we're absolutely behind. Behind what our capability is.
How long does it take to catch up?
We can do this in a couple of years with those kind of vehicles, about 4 or 5 years for the total program.
Do you think
But
we've
have
got
to
time? Do you think we've got a couple of years?
Well, here's what President Xi has. We have to go along with what he says. He told his forces to be ready to take Taiwan by force in 27. So that doesn't mean he's going to pull the trigger. What Xi really wants, he wants to dominate us so much militarily that Taiwan knows that the United States likely can't win this war. So they would capitulate, and then would the United States come to their assistance? Well, if you're going to recognize that this is going to be a catastrophic event, tank the world economy, and the United States may not win in the long run, does the President of the United States make a decision to support, or does he throw the towel in? That's where President Xi's head is. He wants us to throw the towel in because he dominates us so militarily. We don't have to go platform to platform with him, Stuart. What we do have to have is a capability like we had with the Soviet Union. They outnumbered us in everything also. But we had enough to impose cost and for those military leaders to look at and say, this is in doubt whether we could win or not. So they never came. That's what we have to achieve, and we can achieve that.
Got to spend a lot of money to do it, don't we?
Of course, it's going to cost us some money.
A Reagan-style buildup is what.
Well, I mean, we took our money and prioritized other things under Democratic administrations. We spent trillions on other things. Now we have to do our knitting here a little bit and do some homework and fix what needs to be fixed.
What a pleasure it is to have a military man on the set who knows what he's talking about. It's extraordinary stuff. No wonder you're so popular. Do you know the ratings go up when you're on? They do, too. General, you're all right.
Yeah,
Thank you
good
very much, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, we welcome to the show and a special interview with Mr. Elon Musk, who, of course, is famed Trump advisor, CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, chair of X Corp. Elon, thank you for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I want to begin, but among other things, everyone's attacking you for your position. What are you doing in the government? There was a cyber attack on X today, which shut it down and may have been foreign sourced.
Yes.
It's a big story. You want to give us a moment on that?
Well, we're not sure exactly what happened, but there was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area.
Oh, well, so that's your suspicion. Is the website, is the internet up? Is it up yet?
It's up, yeah.
It's up yet. Okay, good. But I just was looking back. Let me see if I get this right. They're setting fire to various Tesla charging stations near Boston. Shots were fired at a Tesla dealership in Oregon. Various nonviolent...
Shots fired, not a metaphor.
Shots fired, yes. Downtown New York, marching against the Tesla showroom. Your stock is way down. You've been criticized left and right.
But look on the right side.
I mean, why are you doing this?
Always
That's
look on
really what people
always look
wanna
on the
know.
bright side of life.
Yes. I'm an optimist.
But besides that,
Yes. I mean,
how's your day?
what motivates you to do this?
Was the opera good?
It's tough sledding.
Yeah, it is tough sledding. But I think we're doing the right thing here. There's been a tremendous amount of waste and fraud in the government. When you're part of the government, you saw a lot of that, and there's been, if you look at the Inspector General reports and the Government Accountability Office, there have been many audits that have pointed out that there's a tremendous amount of waste and fraud in the government. In fact, there was a report issued by the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, last year. So during the Biden administration, which estimated the federal government fraud to be $500 billion. So just to be clear, that's not a Trump administration thing, that's a Biden administration thing. So what we're trying to do is get that number down to a much smaller figure, save money for the American taxpayer, stop money being spent on things that I think very few taxpayers would agree make sense. Transgender animal surgeries are look, why are we spending money? Why are American tax dollars being spent on this? The president's gone through a long list of absurd things. Why are the 20 million people who are definitely dead marked as alive in the Social Security database? Why were hundreds of millions of dollars of Small Business Administration loans were given out to people aged 11 and under, according to the Social Security? I mean, like, these must be some very enterprising 8-year-olds, you know.
And some pretty strong 150-year-olds.
Yes, exactly. As the president said, you know, we have an enormous number of people marked as alive who are 160. He didn't know the country was that healthy.
Yes. Yes.
You know.
So demystify this. How do you do it? Okay. How big is your team?
Yeah.
Where'd you recruit most of them from? And what is it that makes you choose, you know, the Treasury or Social Security or USAID? How does it work? Let the public know, please.
Right. Well, we just basically follow the money. You know, we look at the president's executive orders, and we also just follow the money. So we started looking closely at USAID because they were completely violating the president's executive orders to suspend foreign aid, you know, what's called foreign aid, but in our view is a lot of corruption. So what we saw there is just a tremendous amount of money being sent to non-governmental organizations. But actually, this, by the way, is, I think, one of the biggest sources of fraud in the world, is government-funded non-governmental organizations. This is a gigantic fraud loophole where the government can give money to an NGO, and then there are no controls over that NGO. So they've given billions of dollars, in fact, we estimate tens of billions of dollars, to NGOs that are essentially scams.
By the way,
I'm trying to put a stop to that, you know. So
I don't want to interrupt, but Secretary of State Rubio just come out, I think he tweeted today, he has accepted over 80% of your recommendations to shut down in USAID.
Right.
So your review and analysis was spot on.
Yes. So I think when people criticize, say, what DOGE is doing, we say, well, which part specifically? Because we put all of the actions of the DOGE team on the doge.gov website and on the DOGE handle on X. So we post the receipts. So it's like, this action has been taken, this action has been taken. So when we get criticism, we say, like, of what? Which line do you disagree with? Like, which cost saving do you disagree with? And then people usually can't think of any.
No.
You know, so
it's transparent line by line.
It's transparent line by line,
which is quite remarkable.
Right. And so, and then with respect to the Treasury, for example, the two main recommendations we suggested, which have now been implemented, was that any payments going out of the Treasury, especially the Treasury's main payment computer, which is called PAM, things like a payments account manager or something like that, but it's like almost $5 trillion a year, so about $1 billion an hour, that the payments be coded with the congressional appropriation, and that there be an explanation for the payment. Very basic stuff. And just doing that, we estimate will save $100 billion a year.
You're not really, let me see if I get this right, particularly with Social Security, you're not really changing policy.
No, yes.
You're auditing the fiscal mechanisms to make sure that, you know, from point A gets to point B, and that's where it's supposed to get to. In some cases, it doesn't get there, or in some cases, it may go over there. But that's it's not a policy exercise. You're not changing laws. You're just doing what any business would do in a profit and loss audit.
I think we're really what we're adding here is caring and competence. And there's a massive amount of fraud of basically people submitting Social Security numbers for Social Security benefits, unemployment, Small Business Administration loans, and medical, where those are fake Social Security numbers, or they've stolen somebody else's Social Security number, and we're trying to put a stop to all of that. And that's the number which is estimated to be on the order of 10% of federal expenditures, which is, half a trillion dollars.
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
You're working with the agency heads. You're working with the cabinet secretaries.
Yes.
I saw Howard Lutnick was on TV yesterday saying you were partnering with them. Is that fair?
Yeah, what we do is in consultation with the cabinet secretaries and with their departments. So we're really trying to be we'll refer to ourselves as tech support. We're really helping the department get a handle on things, because what actually happens here is you've got this sort of vast federal bureaucracy, and then you've got a very thin layer on top of the politically appointed officials. And what tends to happen is that the bureaucracy, frankly, is in control. And they largely ignore the politically appointed people.
Why should the bureaucracy?
I'm sure you must have seen that.
I've lived with this twice. I worked for Reagan many years ago, and I worked for Trump in the first term.
Yeah.
It's like a permanent bureaucracy. I might add, it's a permanently liberal bureaucracy.
Yes, very much so.
And it's not a bureaucracy that necessarily enforces or implements presidential policy.
They don't. In fact, they try their best to thwart presidential policy. So the president is the elected representative of the people. And if the president cannot get things implemented as a reflection of the will of the people, then what we have is not a democracy, we have a bureaucracy. We have rule of the bureau, not rule of the people. And that's what we're trying to defeat here is the bureaucracy and have rule of the people. As you mentioned, the bureaucracy is overwhelmingly Democrat. So Washington, D.C. was 92.5%, I believe, voted for Kamala. So this is overwhelmingly a deep blue situation.
How do you pick your next targeted agency or department?
Well, we're trying to act broadly across all departments, so it's not just one department at a time.
Are you in all of them now? All of them?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes. Oh.
We're trying to make the government more efficient across the board. So yeah.
How big's your team?
We're a little over 100 at this point.
100.
Get to 200.
You're going to get to 200.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're recruiting from where? More or less.
Basically, it's software people, information security software people, and finance. It's basically, finance and technology. I mean, frankly, I can't believe I'm here doing this. It's kind of bizarre, but I kind of think that we've got this enormous federal budget deficit, and it's a $2 trillion deficit. It keeps growing. Our interest payments are higher than our Defense Department budget. That's I think was the real wake-up call for me, was looking at seeing that the interest payments to national debt exceeded the Defense Department budget, and that was only growing over time, which meant if we didn't do something about this, then there won't be any money for anything. We'll just be servicing debt.
And you know how to read an income statement, and you know how to read a balance sheet. You've had some business experience. I'm kidding, but you know about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really, I just don't want America to go bankrupt.
So it's a call to action. You're hearing a call to action.
Yeah.
You giving up your other stuff? I mean, how are you running your other businesses?
With great difficulty. Yeah, I mean.
But there's no turning back, you're saying?
I'm just here trying to make government more efficient, eliminate waste and fraud, and so far we're making good progress, actually. So our savings at this point exceed $4 billion a day. So it's very significant.
You think you'll wind up getting to $1 trillion of
Yeah.
savings?
I mean, unless we're stopped, we will get to $1 trillion of savings.
And that stuff can be translated. I mean, we've been talking, we had Russell Vought, the OMB director, on earlier, through very rescission authority, impoundment authority. But I believe you said it earlier, it's an audit that will not gather dust on shelves. This is actually going to wind up with real savings, bend the spending baseline down.
Yeah. There have been many good audits, like I said, done by inspector generals and by Government Accountability Office, and they just haven't been implemented. Nothing's been done. I think the GAO identified that there were 17 million dead people in the Social Security database several years ago. It's now 20 million, but nobody did anything about it. I think you can sort of look at this as a complaint minimization optimization. So basically, if the government sends money out to, whether it's wasteful or fraudulent, nobody complains if they receive money, but they do complain if they don't receive money. And the people that complain the loudest are the ones receiving the fraudulent money.
And you're on it.
Yeah. I mean, so the goal here is let's not have America go bankrupt with waste and fraud. So that's what I'm here for, and we're making good progress.
Yes, you are. You're going to go another year?
Yeah, I think so.
Final report, middle of next year?
Well, we're just getting things done as opposed to writing a report. Like I say, reports don't mean anything. You got to actually take action.
Yes.
So the waste report in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. So that's like the big one to eliminate, because that's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $700 billion a year. That is also a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here, and then turning them into voters.
Yes.
So this is why the Democrats are so upset about the situation, because they're losing. If we turn off this gigantic money magnet for illegal immigrants, then they will leave, and they will lose voters.
But you have President's support. He said so again yesterday. He completely supports your operation.
Yeah. Well, thanks. But that's super. Without the President's support, we couldn't make any progress here. Yeah, I mean, where you'll see the biggest outcry is from the Democrats who are, they don't want the waste and fraud to be turned off because it is a gigantic magnet to attract illegal immigrants and have them stay in the country. And I mean, you see some of the crazy stuff, like where money from FEMA, which is meant, FEMA is an agency that's meant to take care of Americans in distress. And a bunch of their money was being sent to pay for luxury hotels in New York for illegal immigrants. And that was happening even after the president was elected, even after he signed an executive order saying that needs to stop. So we actually made sure that money did stop going, because obviously it's outrageous that American taxpayer money is spent on luxury hotels for illegals. But you have to say, like, why was that being done? It was because the Democrats are trying to import voters, basically.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, and that's also why there's no voter ID needed. In fact, in California and New York State, you're not allowed to show voter ID. Doesn't that seem insane?
Insane.
Yeah.
I'd say that as a New Yorker. It's insane.
Yeah, insane.
And it violates the entire Constitution and the principles behind it.
Yes.
Producers are yelling at me to get out. I don't want to end this interview because it's too much fun.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you one thing, 20 seconds? Nothing to do with Doge. Can you rescue the astronauts?
Yes, we're bringing them back in a few weeks.
There's not near enough attention being paid to this. You're going to get them back?
We're going to get them back.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your service, Elon Musk. We appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you.
Welcome back. A complete overhaul coming to the Federal Housing and Finance Agency. Newly confirmed FHFA Director Bill Pulte making prominent changes to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, including ending special purpose credit programs, canceling $6.4 million in DEI spending, and creating a mortgage fraud pipeline. Joining me now is U.S. Federal Housing FHFA Director Bill Pulte. Bill, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. So I want to get your take on where this is going. What would you like to see on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in the coming, let's call it 3 years?
Well, we finally have an administration that cares about these two companies. As you know, the president spent his life in mortgages and real estate, and he hired a businessman to do this job. And we are laser focused on getting these companies to be bigger and stronger than ever before. Maria, as you know, we have $4.4 trillion in assets at Fannie Mae, $3.4 trillion at Freddie Mac. That's bigger than Microsoft, bigger than Saudi Aramco. These are huge companies. And other presidents have, in my opinion, totally neglected these massive, massive companies which the U.S. taxpayers benefit from. So we are focused on making positive changes, and the employees love it.
Do those positive changes include getting them out of the grasp of government?
Well, we'll see. You know, there's many options that the president could do, and the president ultimately will be the one who will make this decision. So I would defer to him on that. I can tell you that what we're doing is running these businesses as businesses. Imagine that. We are elevating great talent. We're bringing people up through the pipeline. And, you know, I'm just very grateful to have a president who actually cares about these two businesses.
Well, look,
I mean, Maria, it's almost criminal that other presidents didn't care about these two assets. The only time they cared about them was when they blew up. And now we're taking proactive steps to make sure they're safer and stronger, and that we have all options on the table.
Yeah, particularly because so many people rely on their mortgages as a result because of Fannie and Freddie. But I want to get your take on this downgrade. Moody's downgrading the U.S. credit rating, and that sent mortgage rates higher. On Tuesday, both the 30-year fixed rate and the 5-year adjusted rate hit above 7%. We are pulling back from that right now this week. The 30-year at 6.8%, the 15-year at 5.92%. What's the impact of the Moody's downgrade, and what are your expectations for long-term mortgage rates?
Well, as Secretary Bessent said and Kevin Hassett reiterated, this was a backward-looking statement. I do want to say, though, that they gave actually an upgrade for an outlook for Fannie and Freddie, which obviously an outlook is in the future. And so we were very happy with that. And I would say that the MBS market is very strong. It's very resilient. And from investors that I talked to, I just spoke at the Mortgage Bankers Association the other day in New York. People are excited about this administration. They're excited about the changes we're making. They're excited about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And the energy in these buildings, Maria, no director had basically ever been in these buildings. They're electric. People are happy to come to work finally at these companies.
And do you think that this is going to alleviate the issues for getting a mortgage? And do you think that the costs will come down anytime soon?
Well, I think the president's very focused, as you know, on lowering inflation. He's been very successful. He's gotten oil down. He's gotten eggs down. He's gotten groceries down. One thing that nobody gives him credit for is he's also gotten housing to not be growing in terms of inflation so much. I mean, people are going to slowly be able to afford a home, but we got a lot of work ahead of us, Maria. The last 4 years were devastating with Biden's inflation.
Yeah, well, look, I want to switch gears and ask you about your recommendation. You recommended that the DOJ investigate New York Attorney General Letitia James over alleged mortgage fraud. The AG, Letitia James, has responded. We don't have the video, but here's the quote. "This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia resident. And prior to that, I indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. They just took the power of attorney, and they're using that as a basis for enforcement of their investigation." Bill, do you know why she said she was a resident of Virginia on the power of attorney, if in fact she wasn't?
Well, I know that we are mortgage experts, and we only refer things that we think are mortgage fraud, and we stand 100% behind the letter. I'll let the letter speak for itself. I do know, and I have seen some reports from that subject, from that subject's criminal defense lawyer, saying certain things. I'll leave it to the DOJ to correct various things. But again, when we see mortgage fraud, we are going to report it. When we see mortgage fraud, we are going to prosecute it within the confines of our duties. And we are not going to be intimidated by a subject's criminal defense lawyer. We are not going to be intimidated by a politician or just because you have an Esquire behind your name. We are not going to be intimidated by people. If we see mortgage fraud, we're going to do something about it. And I think that you're going to see us be taking this on in a big way. Mortgage fraud is a big problem. These companies are safe and sound, but where we see it, we are going to do something about it. And that subject's case is no different.
Well, what are the ramifications of this now that you've referred this for criminality to the DOJ?
Well, I would refer that to the DOJ. Again, as I say, we spend our days, we are mortgage experts. We are not politicians. I view this as an economic job. Obviously, the president can fire me at any time, so I guess in that way. But look, I look at this as an independent agency. We found the mortgage fraud, whether it be that particular subject or other subjects, and we work actively with the DOJ and different law enforcement agencies, and we will continue to do so. We are not going to be intimidated by somebody. Nobody is above the law, and that includes famous people or lawyers or what have you.
And what is your response to her saying, look, this was a mistake. I mistakenly wrote that I was a resident of Virginia?
Well, again, I don't want to respond to the specific comments that she would make or that the subject's criminal defense lawyer would make. I would just say generally that we will leave a lot of that up to the DOJ. I will say, though, however, just as a general matter, that occupancy fraud is a real issue. People saying that they're going to live in one state and going to it and really not even living there and getting better interest rates, getting better down payment terms, as well as people saying that people are part of their families that they're not. I mean, I'm making these general comments because we see patterns of this. We see patterns and practice of fraud across the United States, and this stuff has to stop, Maria.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, the banks and the lenders, they're responding to this. They're now looking at their underwriting, and that's exactly the intended effect that we want any subject who we refer to for DOJ.
All right.
Joining me now, the great Texas Senator, Mr. Ted Cruz. Always a pleasure, Senator Ted Cruz. You know, I wasn't going to talk about all this stuff until the Truth Social post on Iran. I want to get your thoughts on that. You heard my riff, sir. You know, feel free to disagree, but I'm kind of happy he's kind of going after Iran and China with one fell swoop. But how does Senator Cruz see it?
As usual, Larry, I agree with every syllable of every word you said in your opening riff.
Thank you.
And let me follow up and expand a little bit on what you said. As you remember well, in the first Trump term, I was deeply involved in the fight to impose maximum pressure on Iran. And President Trump, the most important national security decision he made his first term was pulling out of the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. I probably spent 24 meetings with him in the Oval Office making the case for that. He agreed with me. He did that. But the follow-up to that, after we pulled out of the disastrous Obama-Iran nuclear deal, there remained in place an oil waiver where Iran was allowed to sell oil, and they were selling roughly 1 million barrels a day of oil. At that point, you'll remember there was a fight within the Trump administration between the State Department and the Energy Department. The State Department said that if we ended the oil waiver, it would cause the global price of oil to skyrocket and the price of gasoline here at home to skyrocket. The Department of Energy, which you might think would know something about energy, said that's nonsense. There's plenty of global supply of oil. We can end the waiver without materially impacting the price of oil. I weighed in again aggressively and said in the oil waiver, the president agreed with me, and we now know that energy was right and state was wrong. Iran's oil sales fell from 1 million barrels a day down to 300,000 barrels a day. And the price of oil didn't move at all. Right. It had essentially no impact on the global price of oil. When Joe Biden came into office, he inherited an Iranian regime. The economy was in free fall. The regime was teetering. And when he came into office, they were selling 300,000 barrels of oil a day. Biden immediately stopped enforcing the oil sanctions, and the Iranian oil sales skyrocketed from 300,000 barrels a day to about 2 million barrels a day. And as you rightly noted, in a very real sense, the Biden administration, by refusing to enforce sanctions, flowed $100 billion to the Ayatollah, and in a very direct way, funded October 7th and Hamas and Hezbollah by providing the principal source of revenue to the regime. So President Trump is exactly right, going back and saying we're going back to maximum pressure. We're going to cut off the money, and we're going to cut off the funds that are funding the terrorists.
You know, I should have put that in the riff. That's precisely what you said. Biden actually lifted the sanctions on Iranian oil sales. He actually lifted them, which, of course, lifted the maximum pressure that Mr. Trump had on this. Now, the second part of this is, of course, the China card.
Yes.
And I know, you know, Mr. Trump is saying he'd like to do some business with China regarding the tariffs, which are whatever they are, 145% on Chinese, anything we import from China. Okay, we'd all like to get these tariffs down. The goal here is to freer trade. And I think that's Mr. Trump's goal, end unfair trading practices. But in this particular situation, I don't know. I mean, to me, going after Iran and telling China, you know, you're basically putting the wood to China on this.
Yeah.
And I think that has to supersede trade deals and contacts. And anyway, China breaks a trade deal that I helped negotiate, blood, sweat, and tears, Bob Lighthizer, Steve Mnuchin. We did that phase one thing back, signed it in January 2020. They broke that too. So I'm not going to shed any tears for China on any count, Senator, on any count. Oil, Iran, trade deals, they're helping to finance the worst elements of society around the world. That's what they're doing. And so they've got to be taken to the woodshed.
Look, I have been urging President Trump on trade, focus on China. And I think every step we can take to de-link our economy from China is good for American national security and good for American economic security. And so I'm very glad the president laid out the pause where he halted the tariffs on the other countries and focused on China. I think that was the right decision to do. I don't think the Iranian oil is going to be an issue. Whatever happens with China and President Trump, look, when we had maximum pressure before, the Iranian oil, we saw their sales plummet, and it was not a big problem for China. China can stop buying this oil. And critically, with the rest of the tariffs, listen, I think the Trump administration has a real fork in the road. They can either go down the road of using the incredible leverage that President Trump has to negotiate much lower tariffs from our trading partners. That's the right path, as you said. That would be a massive economic victory for America, an historic victory for President Trump. The other path they could go down, and there are some voices in the administration that want this second path, is to have high tariffs forever in perpetuity. I think that would be a real mistake and do real damage. So from my end, I am urging President Trump, go down path number one, and it will be truly an historic victory for American workers and American jobs.
Well, I'm back on the same page with you on that one too, Senator. 100%. No, I agree. I know who the negative voices are, but I think they're already losing. And I think the president himself is using his good common sense as a deal maker and as a great president. You know, he sees what to do. I could talk to you all day, but I can't. But I want a couple of other quick things I want to talk to you about.
Sure.
I want to go back to the reconciliation bill, sir. Before I get to the tax cuts, and I know you've got an IRA proposal you want to talk about, we need to cut spending, right? We know that. And, you know, Newt Gingrich has been on the show. Last night, in fact, Newt was on the show. And Newt and I have talked a lot about this. Some Republicans are squeamish about slowing the growth of Medicaid, but they shouldn't be. I mean, Medicaid spending has gone up 51% since 2019. Kim Strassel's got that in her column today, again, as if we needed to be reminded of. And even with waste, fraud, and abuse and some tightening up of eligibility, for example, able-bodied people should not get Medicaid, you'd still be increasing Medicaid by an enormous amount of money, by about $235 billion in this budget window, instead of increasing it by another $500 or $600 billion. But we'd still be increasing it by a couple of $100 billion. That should be enough. It's still growing, but it's just not growing as topsy as before. Can Medicaid, you know, relief get in the reconciliation bill, Senator Cruz?
I believe it can. I believe it will. We've got to rein in spending, particularly coming out of COVID. Joe Biden, the Democrats, spent like drunken sailors. We saw the federal budget, the deficit and debt skyrocket. We got to rein it in because we're bankrupting our kids and grandkids. And if you look at Medicaid, there is massive waste, fraud, and abuse. You look at the current system right now. Obamacare incentivized states to spend a lot more money on young, healthy adults than they spend on children and than they spend on really vulnerable seniors. Medicaid was designed to help the most vulnerable, not a 25-year-old guy with no kids who's perfectly healthy, who is not right now working.
Right.
I think one of the most important things we need to do is for young, healthy adults, put in a work requirement to Medicaid. You look at the effect of that, that is incredibly beneficial, getting people back to work, and that changes people's entire trajectories, entire lives. I think we've got an enormous opportunity to do that right now in reconciliation.
The original mandate, Senator, low-income families, children, people with disabilities, not able-bodied, but people with disabilities and pregnant women. So if we return to the eligibility mandates that were first put in, we save a couple $100 billion minimum. So you're right, spot on that. Tell me about your IRA proposal, sir, and tell me that we're going to get all the Trump tax cuts extended, and we're going to get 2.0. We're going to get the tax-free tips for service workers and overtime and senior Social Security benefits. Tell me it's all going to come true.
So, look, we're going to get it done. You remember well in 2017, tax reform is messy. There are a million trade-offs. There are trade-offs between big companies and little companies and C-corps and S-corps and partnerships and families and individuals. There are trade-offs between red states and blue states and rural and urban and suburban, and that just takes time. And so there's going to be in 2017, I spent hundreds of hours negotiating the first Trump tax cuts. We're going to have to go through that here as well. But we will get it done, because if we don't act, there's an automatic $4 trillion tax increase. That is unacceptable. So we're going to extend the Trump tax cuts. We're going to pass no taxes on tips. It's my legislation in the Senate, no taxes on tips. We're going to get that done. And I think there are also enormous opportunities. So two of the things I am pressing to do are on school choice. I have legislation that creates a federal tax credit for contributions to scholarship granting organizations in the states.
Real quick,
we have an opportunity to do the most significant school choice bill in history, and also to help people save tax-free with a universal savings account. I hope we do that as well. We need to get it all done.
I love the universal savings account. Make the thing simplified, for heaven's sakes. There's so many of these things. I love that. You're on a roll, Senator Cruz. Honestly, you're on a complete tear. Thank you very much for all your wisdom.
Thank you, Larry.
We appreciate it.
Welcome back. President Trump is speaking right now at the NATO meeting. He is taking center stage as dealmaker-in-chief, securing a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. The president right now live at The Hague, speaking to the audience, including our NATO members. He says Operation Midnight Hammer pushed Iran's nuclear program back by decades. Joining me now is the White House National Economic Council Director, Kevin Hassett. Kevin, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, we've been dominated by what has taken place with our incredible military and our commander-in-chief directing that unbelievable attack on nuclear facilities on Saturday night. But I want to get back to business with you and get your take on what this all means for economic growth in the second half of the year and the trade deals which we're all waiting for.
Right. Well, the big news from the weekend, of course, is peace in the Middle East, but also Iran, basically didn't have any bullets left. They didn't go in and shut the Straits of Hormuz. They didn't cause oil prices to spike above 100, which was certainly the fear of markets. And so the risk premium, it's a risk-off moment that's really, really rare in American history and a sign of the incredible success of President Trump. And what it means is that oil prices, energy prices are going to go down, down, down. Gas prices are going to be down. People are going to have more money to spend on other things, and that's very, very positive for the economy. If you add to that we're about to pass the big, beautiful bill, I understand that it's likely, very likely, to pass the Senate this week and be approved by the House over the weekend. To get all that on top of this big positive stimulus from peace in the Middle East means that the U.S. is hitting on all cylinders. It's really, really good for the outlook.
So do you believe that, because we just spoke with Dan Muser from Pennsylvania, and he said, we think we're going to get the bill on Saturday morning from the Senate. Is that what you're expecting?
Right. Right. We're expecting that they're going to keep the House members in for the weekend so that they can get the Senate bill and then they can bring it to the House floor and then they can all go home for the 4th of July and the president can sign it. And so we're very, very, I guess, anxious to see it done, but confident that it's going to be done and confident that it's going to be done soon. Time is of the essence. And everybody wants this done before the 4th of July, and it looks like the votes are lining up for that to happen.
And what about the issues of debt and spending more? I guess the Senate really tried to cut the spending in Medicaid, but there's now this, debate on what salt, where salt goes. The Senate taking it down to 10,000. Do you think that has to go back up? How will the bill change, do you think, based on what you know from those parties pushing back and voicing their own priorities in this bill? How does it look different once it gets to the House, do you think, Kevin?
Well, I think there's a little bit of work in progress on that still. President Trump has instructed Treasury Secretary Bessent to work closely with Senate and House leaders to make sure that they find a happy landing place for the SALT deduction. I know that there are a lot of conservatives who don't like it, a lot of very important people in the House who want it as big as it could be, and Secretary Bessent is in there working with people to find exactly the right number that'll land the bill. The bottom line is that sometimes, it used to be that the Senate would have a bill and then the House wouldn't like it, and then they'd have this big conference committee, and the conference committee would go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And what we're doing now is we're sort of pre-negotiating, pre-conferencing, trying to get the Senate bill to be something that the House is going to love so much that they vote for it right away. And I was the dinner speaker a couple of nights ago for many, many House members. The Speaker of the House was there as well. And I got to say that the enthusiasm for this bill was over the top. And it was over the top because of the substance of it. This is going to be a great bill for American workers, a great bill for the American economy.
I've got to tell you, it's not just a big focus in Washington. I mean, I've spoken with plenty of business people, and they're expecting it now, Kevin. I spoke with the chairman and CEO of Bank of America yesterday, and he said if the tax extensions do not go through, it's going to be a shock to the system. Watch Brian Moynihan with me yesterday here. Watch.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Is this a front center issue? Getting those tax rates extended, ensuring they get this bill over the finish line?
Well, there's an assumption they'll be extended so much, though, that if it didn't get extended, it would be a real shock to the system, and that's what everybody's working to avoid. The debt is more of a front and center topic in America today. The levels have gotten to where there's more concern among bipartisan and things like that. So that's why I think there's hope. Back in about 10 to 12 years ago, there was a bipartisan commission to try to figure out how to solve this. I think you could see efforts to push through some way to manage this more effectively. But I'd say that the taxes really, everybody's assuming to get through, it would be a real shock to the system they don't. So I think that's the number one thing, just to take away that tail risk of it not being extended.
And yet, Kevin, we just spoke with Maya McGuinness from the Committee for a Responsible Budget, who continues to say that there could be more cuts to get us out of this 10-year expectation that we're going to have deficits of $2.2 trillion a year and debt of almost $60 trillion by 2035.
Look, the bottom line is that if we get 3% growth, then we're going to have $4 trillion more revenue than the CBO score, which means that already the deficit's going down by trillions. The CBO has told us that the tariffs that are already in place, President Trump's tariffs that are already in place, are going to give us extra revenue of $2.8 trillion over 10 years. And the DOGE cuts, people forget about the DOGE cuts. They don't count in the big, beautiful bill because you can't have discretionary spending in a reconciliation package. We've now accumulated DOGE cuts that we can send to the House and the Senate to send back and to give the people their money back of $160 billion. That's almost $2 trillion over 10 years. And so this is the biggest deficit reduction, the most fiscally responsible package in the history of American fiscal policy.
Yeah.
And so anybody who claims to speak for fiscal responsibility and opposes this bill and our actions is just pushing partisan propaganda. This is the biggest deficit reduction package in history by far.
Do you
by
believe,
many multiples.
Do you believe you're going to get the Congress will get another bite at the apple later in the year to cut further in terms of spending?
No, we're going to get another bite of the apple over and over and over again.
Okay.
Because what we could do is we could take the silly spending on research on the sexuality of chipmunks and all that stuff that we're not spending, and we can send it back to Congress, and they can rescind it under these same rules. It's not subject to filibuster. With 51 Republican votes, you can rescind all that stupid spending, and we've accumulated up about $160 billion of that doesn't even count inside this bill. So that's another $2 trillion in spending cuts over the next 10 years of things that if Congress agrees to rescind it, will be gone forever. And so President Trump is really serious about fiscal responsibility, and he's showing it with his actions. And so people who worry about the deficit, they're right. You should always worry about the deficit, but you should have an informed worry. And an informed worry is, wow, this is the most progress I've ever seen, ever, for a White House.
Well, look, Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, has said many times the president is doing peace deals, tax deals, trade deals, and you just mentioned the tariffs. Look, we spoke several weeks ago, and you said we're going to have many deals done. We're going to have many deals done potentially this week, right? So far, the only deal that we've seen is the deal with the UK. Have the conversations on trade taken a back seat now to what has gone on in Iran? And now should we expect these trade deals to happen later down the road as opposed to imminently?
Yeah, sooner rather than later. It turns out that there are a lot of interactions between what's in the tax bill and our trade negotiations that are underappreciated, and that, of course, very highly appreciated by Mr. Trump, who very much goes into the details. But as an example, we have this $8.99 tax, which is a response for the U.S. government if the foreign countries continue to use their Pillar 2 taxes and their DSTs against our companies. We don't like those things. And we've got a tax response, a tax retaliation, a reciprocal retaliation in the bill. But maybe it doesn't have to be in the bill if they pull those things back ahead of the vote. And so we're in negotiations over tax issues, and those tax issues that we negotiate affect the trade deals as well. Because if they're going to continue to be taxing our companies where we think they don't have jurisdiction to do so, then of course that has to come up in the trade deal as well. And so we're going to finish the tax business, and then there are going to be a lot of deals signed right thereafter, after we see what's going on with the other things like DSTs.
I'm glad you mentioned Section 899 because this is an area of debate within the banking sector. I mean, there are plenty of people who feel that 899 is capturing more people, more companies than intended. So sure, you want to make sure that you've got something in place to hit back at foreign countries who are, charging us things like digital tax, et cetera, et cetera. But is it also hitting investors who are investing in America, who you want to encourage to continue investing in America, but now they're facing an additional tax?
Right. Our hope is, we're in negotiations with our leading trading partners. Our hope is that they issue policy pronouncements today or tomorrow that make it so that we don't need to include 899 in the bill. That's our hope.
So you think there's a chance that 899 comes out of this bill?
I sure do, yeah.
I see. In terms of remittances and the other areas of the bill, as we sort of pick through the weeds here, as well as the pass-through, tell me what else is a priority for you and what you're hoping actually comes out of this bill. Because there are unintended consequences, Kevin.
Right. Well, I think that the president's top priorities are the things that are going to help middle-class people the most. It's the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, and of course the Trump account, which is going to put $1,000 into an account of equities, an equity index fund for every newborn in America, which is going to make every newborn in America recognize that they're a part, they have a piece of the action. They're a part of the American system. And if a socialist comes in and says the corporate tax rate needs to be 90%, then it's going to destroy the wealth of these poor kids, and it's going to fundamentally change the political equilibrium of America. I think there's so much that I love in this bill, but I would get those are the things that I love the most.
Well, the whole idea of having a child start, as an infant with money is great. It's financial literacy. It's great all around. Kevin, before you go, we heard from Jay Powell yesterday. We're going to hear from Jay Powell again today, and he continues to say he's in no rush. Even though I think today he was a little more dovish, to be honest with you. I think he is going to cut rates, and it's going to happen soon, but he continues to say he's in no rush to cut rates because he's watching to see if, in fact, the tariffs trigger inflation. What's your answer to that, Kevin?
Right. Well, we've seen that the tariffs haven't triggered inflation. And you, Maria, and I have talked about this over and over on your Sunday show, out of this show, that if you tax the Chinese and it's inelastic supply, then the Chinese bear the tax. And that's what we're seeing. We've got the lowest inflation that we've seen in over 4 years. And the Fed has given us about the highest interest rates on earth, while other countries around the world have been cutting. I got to say that if the Fed respects its independence, then it should pay attention to what Republicans are saying about Jay Powell. Because Jay Powell is the person who cut rates right ahead of the election to help Kamala Harris. Jay Powell is the person who voted to increase rates the first time Donald Trump was elected, even before he was inaugurated.
Yeah.
He was a person who warned about the inflation of supply side, but didn't warn about the inflation of runaway spending. And so it looks like he's been a person, I'm not saying that he is, but policy action suggests that he's a person who's been basically doing whatever it is that Elizabeth Warren wants him to do.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to House members who were about to talk to Jay a couple of nights ago, I've never seen so much partisan vitriol towards the Fed chair in my lifetime. And it's not because President Trump is saying things, it's because the evidence of his actions is not defensible.
Yeah.
Unless you say that he's being partisan.
Yeah,
and so he's in real trouble. He's in real trouble.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, we know what he did right before the election. Kevin, real quick, we got to jump, but very quickly, the president wants Jay Powell to cut rates. He talks about the debt. We're holding more and spending more on interest on the debt. Do you think if he were to cut rates, short-term rates go down, does that affect long-term rates and the debt?
I think that you'd get a parallel shift if we were to cut rates. I think right now the long rates are high because people think Jay Powell is going to continue to keep rates as high as he can all the way through the midterms. That's my guess.
Kevin, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for taking all that on.
Maria. Yep.
Great
Bye-bye.
conversation. Kevin Hassett at the White House. We'll be right back.
Joining us now is Newt Gingrich, dear friend and mentor, former Speaker of the House, and of course Fox News contributor and author of Trump's Triumphs, which is out now. So, Newt, we've got to replace the mullahs. We've got to have regime change. You're suggesting, frankly, that no deal would ever be any good. And I totally agree with you, unless and until the mullahs are replaced by some kind of secular government. Tell us more about your thinking, please.
Well, I mean, start with the fact that for 46 years, since 1979, mullahs, the theocracy, has said death to America. And as recently as a few months ago, the Ayatollah Khamenei went on national television to say, I want to reassure you, death to America is not a slogan, it is a policy. And of course, the other part of that policy is death to Israel. So we've had a 46-year experience of what it's like to try to deal with people who have been again and again and again engaged in terrorism. In 1984, the State Department said they were the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world. That's been true ever since. So at some point, you've got to learn the lessons of history. The fact is, you wouldn't have to use B-2 bombers and you wouldn't have to use giant blockbusters if you had a regime which agreed that it would destroy Fordow as part of the peace agreement. The fact is, if you get regime change, you're in a different world. And by the way, you wouldn't need to use American tax dollars. There are an amazing number of very successful Iranian-American businessmen and businesswomen who would be thrilled to be able to go back and invest in rebuilding Iran and creating a prosperous, dynamic country. It's twice the size of Texas. It has huge resources. It has people who are inherently very smart, very well educated. And if they were liberated from this theocracy, they would rapidly become prosperous, be good neighbors, and be a remarkable step in the right direction. I'm very proud of President Trump because he stood up against the appeasement, defeatist mentality of the elites and has continued to say, no nuclear weapons in Iran, period. As long as he sticks to that and allows Netanyahu to continue his work, I think we will presently see a remarkable historic change in the Middle East.
You know, we have talked on the show several times last week. We've talked about this Persian diaspora that exists in New York, in Washington, D.C., in L.A., for example. And as you say, these are successful bankers and investors and entrepreneurs and business people. And they still have a lot of ties, to friends and relatives in Iran itself. But the other point I'll make is, Mark Levin mentioned this last night, free people don't do what Iran does. In fact, free people don't do what the Nazis did in World War II. Free people don't do what Mussolini did. Free people don't do what the Japanese did. Free people don't behave this way with nuclear weapons to destroy other countries. And so that is another reason, because this thing's a police state, and it will forever be a police state, a terrorist, military-run police state, unless and until, and here's my point, Newt, the Iranian street has to overturn them. We can't overturn them. We can't do nation building. We tried that. It doesn't work out very well. The Iranian street has to do it, Newt. Your thought?
Well, my thought is that the Israelis need to move strategically towards taking out every asset of the Revolutionary Guard. The more we weaken the police forces, which have been the forces of tyranny, the greater the opportunity will be for the people of Iran. And there's pretty good evidence that about 80% of the country, 4 out of every 5 Iranians, oppose the regime. But as recently as 2 years ago, 500 of them were hung in public by a dictatorship in order to scare people. So I think you have to recognize breaking down the regime. Frankly, I think hitting that television station is a good idea, cutting off all communication between the regime and the street, destroying the people who are the primary oppressors so people can start to gather, talk with each other, and frankly, potentially by getting Elon Musk to move Starlink over Iran, enabling the people of the country to communicate with each other, because right now the state-controlled internet is not available, and so it's hard for people to organize. But I think that there's a real possibility that if the focus is replacing the mullahs, that in fact you're not going to have to worry about bombing Fordow, because part of the agreement with the new government will be that they will do it themselves as part of a process. No nuclear weapons, no strategic missiles, but huge prosperity and freedom for the people of Iran. I think that's a pretty winning formula.
You know, just last thought. I agree with you 100%. 100%. Back in 2009, Obama's first year as president, you recall, Iran had elections that were phony and rigged and overturned, and there were 1 million Iranians in the street, and Obama refused to back them. And then Iran came in and subjugated them, threw them in jail. God knows what he did with them, shot some of the leaders. We had a chance then. If anything like that happens again, we should stand up and start talking in favor of the Iranian street. Last word, Newt Gingrich. What you think?
That's right. Well, my last word is President Trump's on the right track. I hope that he resists all the pressure from both the American and foreign elites, all of whom have an appeasement, defeatist attitude. And I hope he realizes that only by replacing the mullahs will you be able to get to a safe, peaceful Iranian future. And that, by the way, would mark him as one of the greatest leaders in modern history.
Absolutely. Terrific stuff, Newt Gingrich. Thank you, my friend. We appreciate it very, very much.